Why everything changes after $20,000. There's a very specific, quiet feeling that occurs when you finally cross the threshold of having $20,000 in a liquid savings account. It isn't the feeling of being rich. In London, New York, or Berlin, $20,000 or euros doesn't buy you a house, and it certainly doesn't allow you to retire. But something happens to your brain when that number hits the screen. For most people living in the modern West, life is a series of monthly subscriptions. We don't own our lives. We rent them. We rent our shelter. We rent our transportation through leases. And we even rent our status through credit. We are trained to think in terms of, can I afford the monthly payment, rather than what is the total cost of my existence? Most people spend their entire careers running just fast enough to stay in the same place. They earn more, only to owe more. But the moment you hold $20,000 in cash, money that isn't earmarked for a bill, money that isn't a loan, the logic of the system starts to break. You begin to see the invisible cage of the middle class. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's look at a typical professional in their late 20s or early 30s. Let's call him Marc. Marc lives in a city like Chicago or maybe Frankfurt. He earns a respectable salary, let's say $65,000 a year. After taxes, health insurance, and Social Security, Marc sees about $4,000 hit his bank account every month. On paper, Marc is doing well. He is the success story his parents wanted. But let's look at the math of his success. His rent is $1,600. It's a nice place, close to work, because Marc values his time. Then there's the car. In the U.S., the average new car payment has hovered around $700 for a while now. In Europe, it might be a lower monthly lease, but the fuel and insurance even it out. Let's say $600 for the car. Then there's a student loan, another $400. Utilities, phone, and inevitable subscriptions, Netflix, Spotify, the gym he occasionally visits. That's another $300. Before Marc has even bought a loaf of bread or a cup of coffee, $2,900 is gone. He has $1,100 left for the month. Then life happens. A friend gets married in another state. An iPhone screen cracks. A Friday night dinner turns into a $120 tab. By the end of the month, Marc has maybe $200 left. He feels like he's working hard, but his net worth is effectively zero. He is one check engine light away from a crisis. This is a middle-class break-even. It is a state of perpetual motion where you are high-functioning, highly taxed, and completely stagnant. Marc isn't poor, but he isn't free. He is a sophisticated tenant of his own life. The mistake Marc is making isn't that he spends too much on lattes. It's a structural error in how he views money. Most people in the U.S. and Europe are taught to maximize their lifestyle-to-income ratio. If they earn more, they immediately consume more. But here's the math that the banks don't want you to do. When you have $0 in savings and you take out a $30,000 car loan at 7% interest over 6 years, you aren't just paying for a car. You're paying roughly $6,800 in interest. But the real cost is the opportunity cost of that monthly $500 payment. If that $500 were invested instead over those same 6 years, it would be worth nearly $45,000. The system is designed to keep you in the monthly payment mindset as long as you can afford the $500 a month. The bank is happy to let you ignore the fact that you are trading months of your life to pay for a depreciating metal box. Now, let's look at what happens when you reach that $20,000 mark. $20,000 is a psychological escape velocity. Why? Because it represents roughly 6 months of Marc's total expenses. Suddenly, the check engine light isn't a disaster. It's an inconvenience. When you have $20,000, you stop being a victim of circumstance. You stop saying, I have to stay at this job I hate because I have bills. And you start saying, I am here because I choose to be. The math of $20,000 isn't just about the money itself. It's about the shift from defensive living to offensive living. For the first time, you own a piece of your future time. You are no longer pre-selling your labor for the next 3 years to pay off a credit card or a car. So, if the math is so simple, why do most people stay stuck? Why do people earn $100,000 and still have less than $1,000 in the bank? The reason is a psychological phenomenon called relative deprivation. We don't judge our success by our bank balance. We judge it by our surroundings. In London, if everyone in your social circles go to brunch and wearing specific brands, you feel a visceral, evolutionary need to match them. To not match them feels like a loss of status. And in the human brain, a loss of status feels like a threat to survival. We use money to signal that we are safe and successful. But the irony is that by signaling safety, we destroy our actual safety. We spend the cash that would provide true security to buy the clothes that merely look like security. It's a performance. And the audience is usually people who are just as broke and stressed as you are. When you reach $20,000, the performance starts to matter less. You realize that the person with the $80,000 leased BMW and $400 in their savings account is actually in a much more fragile position than you are in your 5-year-old Toyota with $20,000 in the bank. You start to value the internal feeling of power over the external display of it. People who build long-term wealth in the U.S. and Europe don't necessarily earn more than Marc. They just view the game of money differently. First, they decouple their identity from their consumption. They understand that a car is a tool for transport, not a trophy of their worth. They look at a $500 monthly payment, and they don't see a car. They see $6,000 a year that could be buying their freedom. Second, they prioritize liquidity. In a volatile economy, cash is the ultimate insurance policy. While everyone else is locked into 30-year mortgages and 5-year car leases, the person with $20,000 and then $50,000 has options. They can move for a better job. They can start a small business. They can negotiate from a position of strength because they don't need the next paycheck to survive the week. This is the margin of safety. Think about the peace of mind that comes from knowing that if your employer decided to let you go tomorrow, you wouldn't have to change your lifestyle for half a year. That peace of mind changes how you carry yourself in meetings. It changes the risks you are willing to take. It makes you a more rational, less desperate person. The financially intelligent person isn't necessarily a minimalist. They just realize that every dollar has two uses. It can buy a temporary hit of dopamine today, or it can buy a permanent hour of freedom tomorrow. Once you hit that first $20,000, the freedom option starts to look a lot more attractive than the dopamine option. You realize that wealth isn't about the things you buy. It's about the things you don't have to do. You don't have to say yes to a toxic boss. You don't have to panic when the economy dips. You don't have to live in a state of quiet desperation. Building that first $20,000 is the hardest part of the journey. It requires you to say no to a culture that is constantly screaming at you to say yes. It requires you to be okay with looking average while you are actually becoming exceptional. But once you cross that line, everything changes. The gravity of debt starts to lose its pull. You stop thinking in months and start thinking in years. You stop being a tenant of the system and start becoming an owner. It's not about being a millionaire overnight. It's about the quiet, steady realization that you are no longer a slave to the next 30 days. If you found this perspective helpful, you might want to consider how your own monthly payment mindset is affecting your long-term clarity. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, feel free to subscribe for more thoughts on the intersection of money and psychology. Take care of your time. It's the only thing you can't buy more of later.